Hey, Bob Coppage, CoMITs for MSPs, Crotchio Geek, CEO Simplex IT, man about town. Anywho, this is a recording of our October CoMITs free webinar, and the topic for this one is how to arrange so that your CoMITs practice and your peer MSP practice are living together and are as effective as they can be, because you want that kind of efficiency. You don't want two completely different business practices. As we're doing with all of the free monthly CoMITs events, this is 30 minutes of presentation by yours truly. Yeah, yay. Followed by 30 minutes of open discussion, Q&A. Had some great questions. We're only putting the presentation up online. So if you want to get in on this, go to CoMITs4MSPs.com, link here, and all you got to do is just register for the free stuff. You'll get some examples, some sample marketing pieces, all that kind of thing, and you'll then receive alerts when these events are happening. Again, they're every month, they're free, open, all of that kind of fun stuff. If you want to take this a step further, because we're doing a CoMITs Pure MSP hybrid presentation every month for potential clients. We've done 2 of them so far. We're putting the presentations up to our starter kit members. Again, go to CoMITs4MSPs.com and look for the starter kit. Every month you're going to be getting that. You'll get our presentations. You'll also get the recording of the presentation so you can actually see how it went, all the marketing materials we do for the presentation. We had 30 people for our last one, which was yesterday, which was a cybersecurity that was aimed at both pure MSP and co-managed. It can be done. You also get one-on-one training sessions with me, as well as the copy of the book, I Don't Want Your Job. You get PDF copies of this. And this is the version that does not have my MSP scattered throughout it. So it is a MSP neutral copy. You also get the one and only attendance for the one and only CoMITs peer meeting, which is meeting every month. We just had our first meeting last month. It went pretty well. And much more. And for signing up for the starter kit, you get everything through mid-year next year. So take a look at that again at this website. And without further ado, let's go to the presentation. So, hey everybody, Bob Coppage, Crotchio Geek, CoMITs for MSPs, whatever other description one needs to use that doesn't involve a police report. Thanks for joining. This is our latest in the monthly free and open CoMITs for MSP webinars. What we're going to be talking about this time is really about the internals, about trying to make sure that your organization isn't creating 2 companies inside, one for co-managed and one for pure MSP. And it's going to be, basically this is going to be relatively quick. We're only going to spend about 30 minutes on the topic, but we're going to try to cover some of the key points I think that are appropriate in what we've gone through. And then I'll be hanging around for another 30 minutes to handle any questions about this or anything else. At this point, my plans are that we will be, we're recording this part of the meeting, the first 30 minutes. I don't plan on posting the second half of the meeting. So, you know, that's where you can curse me in that side of the fence. And feel free to make any comments or questions throughout this thing. And hopefully you can all see my presentation screen, because gosh, it's so cool. And I'm calling it the whole living together equals money, and we'll get into why. But the bottom line is we want to be as efficient as possible. And we'll go through why that is meaningful as we go through this. So most of you guys already know all this stuff. This is basically all of the CoMITs for MSPs.com. There's resources as well as members only who have the starter kit resources. You can sign up there for some free stuff. Also, the Facebook group, we actually passed 1,000 members. No one is as surprised as me. But we're also having some good conversations up there, so feel free to take advantage of that. On the other side of the fence, the starter kit group, we just held our first, and this is a members only thing, but our first monthly CoMITs peer group conversation, which I thought was pretty good. We had about 8 or so people who attended that, and we were talking a lot about what we're doing with LinkedIn, and we've added some new presentations specifically on the CoMIT side of things, which if we get a second, we'll talk about that later on. So, anywho, without further ado, boy, I have 3 books. Isn't that wonderful? Yep. Again, caveats as always. They're based on this is based on my definitions of co-managed IT services and CoMITs. And there's actually, I'm starting to break those two apart, where CoMITs is a subset of co-managed IT services, and we'll talk about that a little bit here. And I'd love to get some feedback on that. So, and this is a standard slide I've had, and you'll notice those who've seen this many times, first of all, I'm sorry, but there's actually a subtle difference. Now I'm basically saying co-managed IT services is kind of the umbrella. That is a relationship between an MSP providing services to a client who has internal IT department. Whereas CoMITs is that subset that actually includes sharing of the stamps, the software, tools, methodologies, portals. So it's really a day-to-day operational relationship between the organizations. But the key thing is it's up to you. And whenever I have conversations with MSPs who are just getting started, almost every first conversation I have is that whole, someone just approached me. I just got a call from a potential client. They want to do this, they want to do that. Get ahead of that. Get your definition already in place, or your offerings already in place, even if they're just generalized, so that, because otherwise you're going to respond and you're going to give an offering based on what they're asking for, not necessarily what they need, and not necessarily what's easy for you to duplicate and repeat, which is at the core, it's what makes MSPs profitable, most profitable. We'll talk about that. And we'll talk about that starting right now. Again, MSPs make money. We make money by valuable service in a repeatable format. We're getting back to that whole, we want to be that franchise operation in terms of the service delivery, and we want it to be absolutely valuable, but we want to be able to offer it as frequently as possible without having to reinvent the wheel. And that's true for co-managed as well as it is for what we call pure MSP. And we got a couple people joining. So bear with me a sec. And we want to minimize the uniqueness between client offerings without associated increased value to both parties. So we don't want uniqueness unless that uniqueness is valuable to everybody. And this is true not only between the pure MSP and the co-managed MSP, but then between the co-managed MSP offerings. It's kind of like if your pure MSP clients had their choice of antivirus, had their choice of firewalls, had their choice of PSA or RMM tools, that would be horrible. That would cut into your profits because you would have to have technicians who are familiar with all of these tools, all these things. The same thing is true with co-managed. So profitability will plummet, and it's tough to enter into that conversation later. You want to have that conversation right out of the gate, and we'll talk about that a bit. Because the client starts out, they want to whatever their symptoms, because that's what else do they know? They don't know. They may think they know the cure, and this is where the danger lies in. But really, they're coming to you with the symptoms. If you're not marketing, with here's where we're going to head. Here's our end solution. So these are some examples of what I've frequently heard. Excuse me. Of what I frequently heard from MSPs who are approached by companies who have internal IT departments, who want to build some kind of relationship. And these seem very, very different, but they're not necessarily. They can all be handled by a core setup that you can put together of different offerings that may look different in terms of how the client sees them or perceives them, but are actually subsets of your pure MSP offering, if you're careful and if you're proactive. So we're going to talk about that. And here's something new that I've started to build on, and that is, this is essentially, and you'll notice I'm even including pure MSP here. What an MSP delivers are basically a combination of these 5 types of services. And we go Seagull, Services Subscription, Silo, CoMITs, Pure MSP. If you've read my books, you've seen all these. But I've never quite bundled them like this. And this is kind of new. And there's a change in my brain that's been going on lately, and we'll get into that a little bit here. But you can have any or all of these. Now, when I've had this discussion with some MSPs, they'll look at this as if it's a you start at the top and you gradually move a client down this way. And you use one as a foot in the door and you grow. And that in terms of how it could end up happening, but watch out for that as a mindset, because especially if you use any of these as a foot in the door strategy, you run the risk of coming off as if you're doing CoMITs only so you can ultimately do pure MSP. And that's horrible. That is just because you're basically saying, I don't want your job today, but I'm gonna, and soon. It's not going to work, especially if you get a reputation of that's how you approach co-managed IT services. So foot in the door, be careful about that. And I'm probably going to do another webinar exactly on that because I've heard that too many times, you know, from this aspect of it. So be careful about that. So to go over these real briefly, because I think it's valuable, the Seagull. The Seagull really should not, Seagull projects, and again, the seagull metaphor, they come out of nowhere, they squawk, they make a lot of noise, they drop a lot of crap, and then they fly away. You should be minimally seagull, meaning that you should be doing projects for organizations so you only have other, it's kind of like break fix on steroids. If you're doing projects, you should be trying to do projects for your existing MSP clients, CoMITs or otherwise, your existing other clients, and in which case you're never flying away and leaving them alone. You're only doing the project because you've already got this relationship. That said, I understand some organizations are either transitioning from break fix or they have these as, that's absolutely fine, that's understandable. Okay. Services. All you're doing is reselling the services. No added value, no monitoring, no management, no nothing. You're basically selling subscriptions. Okay. Then Silo MSP, that's one where you could be doing like 365, including management, support, help desk, whatever, or you could be doing, I'm only doing the firewalls, we're only doing the backups, we're only doing whatever. So you've basically cut a slice out of the IT map, and that's what you're doing, and you're doing it all the way through very, very well indeed, but there's nothing outside of that silo. Which again, as if you've heard me talk about this, silo's great, it's easy to get in, but it's also easy to be replaced. Okay. CoMITs, that's where we have an actual relationship with the internal IT. That's where we're actually bringing our stamps, bringing our tools. They're using the PSA, they're using the RMM, all of that kind of fun stuff. And then finally, the pure MSP, which is where we are the internal IT department. I think these are the 5 models. And boy, would I love to hear some feedback or some alternatives, things that don't fit. This is really what MSPs do. Are these 5 models in terms of service delivery. Okay. Now let's talk about internal. There's really 3 aspects. When we talk about CoMITs and wanting to make sure it works within your organization, there's really 3 things I want to talk about, and that is it's all about the life cycle. So marketing, sales, and service. And by service, that is you're delivering the services to the client. All right. And what is it that's both different about co-managed versus pure, but also the same, so that we don't have, because what we don't want 2 marketing strategies or 2 completely different marketing strategies, one for CoMITs and one for pure, that you almost have to duplicate every one of your expenses, every one of your resources, every one of the things you do. Same thing for sales. I think, especially for the smaller MSPs, you don't want necessarily a completely different sales force. If you're large enough to warrant it, a totally different story. But I don't think you necessarily want to have a completely different process, a completely different sales force, a completely different presentation style, all of that. I don't think you need to. And the same thing as far as your service delivery. You don't necessarily want technicians to first have to go, oh, wait, when they see an alert, they see a ticket, they go, oh, let me uniquely verify what I need to do, because every one of those things adds expense. I call it friction, and friction is either time or money, preferably money, because time's more valuable. But it adds friction, and it basically means that you have to reinvent the wheel every time you make any changes here. So whenever possible, we want this stuff to be paralleled. We want this stuff to work in conjunction with each other, or can work together with minimal modifications. Either one of those are fine. So let's start with marketing. And this is interesting because all the other stuff is boring. So as you market, and this is part of this also depends on how sophisticated you are in terms of your marketing, and whether your marketing is inbound marketing like SEO, AdWords, all that kind of fun stuff, versus outbound versus versus focused, all that kind of fun silliness. But here's the thing: know the target of your marketing piece, whether it's pure or CoMITs or a combination. And absolutely, I am fully convinced, and we're developing the experience to prove it, you can market to both. And we'll talk about why or how. And then assume everybody sees your marketing, management and internal IT, which leads us to the third point, which is tone down the attack ads. If you're basically sitting there and 90% of your marketing is talking about how horrible, if your IT support sucks, if your IT people are incompetent, if you're this, you're that, you're the other thing, all of that, and then you come out with a mailer going, we want to be your friend and partner together because together we can, you're going to come off as totally disingenuous. Totally disingenuous. Now, that's not to say that you can't have marketing pieces that do deal a little bit with the FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but talk about the results of the incompetence or the results, not about the people who are delivering the services. Why do it that way? Because if you basically talk about it that way, you at least can make the claim of you're talking about essentially, so you're not complaining about the cook, you're complaining about the meal. And you can say, well, the cook was fine. It was just, look at that oven. How can that cook deal with that oven? How can it do it with that particular resources or tools or whatever? It's a thin road, but it's one that will and can work, okay? And focus on the results. What does strong IT bring to the client? What does it mean to be secure? What does it mean to have healthy backups? Not, are your backups maintained by an idiot? Are your backups ignored? No. Do you have the luxury? Do you know your backups are good? Whatever. Talk about the backups, not the people who are doing them. And again, not your skills at accomplishing it, but what the results are. Because if you talk about the skills that you're going to bring, then you're essentially implying or saying that the people, the internal IT people, don't have skills. They are unskilled in terms of this category. And there may be truth to that. But there's better ways to say that by basically saying something along of, we can support, or your IT people are great, they just need a little support. Your IT people can't be expected to deal with level 3 or senior technician, whatever. You can phrase it in such a way that you're setting that the failure of the IT people is their unrealistic expectations. They don't have the resources. They don't have the support. They're good people. They're good employees. There's ways you can frame that conversation. But here's the thing. What's the goal of a pure MSP? Our goal of the pure MSP is to leave the client having great IT. What's the goal of a CoMITs MSP? The exact same thing. So the marketing can essentially talk about the same deliverable to the client. It's just a question that some of the resource is inside the organization already. And this is one thing that this last point, this is something we've been really, I don't want to say struggling with, but discovering, I guess is the better way to put it, over the past couple of weeks. We really need, oh, actually, no, that's not the right point. This comes later on. You can talk about both when you're following these guidelines. You can essentially say something along the lines of whether you have internal IT resource or have internal IT resources, that's fantastic. We partner well and play well with others. Or if you're if you're currently if you're looking for someone to take all support, we can do that too. We're flexible or something along those lines. So what you're basically saying is we can come in and handle either relationship. And the reason you can say that is because you're focusing on the results. Any questions on that? Okay. Sales. First of all, sales cycle is longer than with a pure MSP. Okay. And reason being is because now you have to not only get you not only have to bring the management in, but you also have to get the internal IT people in, and that adds additional layers of process. But here's the thing: all the other layers are pretty much the same. So all the other layers can pretty much be duplicated with some nuanced changes. But here's one of you want to identify the status as soon as possible. What I mean by that is who really drives IT as far as from a strategic standpoint, because we've seen it in both cases. We've seen it where the internal IT person is, for all purposes, a level 1, level 2 person who is told what to do or given priorities by the CEO, by management. And will basically just go and say, make suggestions or ideas or whatever, but it's pretty much CEO is the organ grinder, the IT person is the monkey. Okay. Also have seen the flip side where the internal IT person is actually pretty good. They have the responsibility, they have the respective management, they just go for final approval and the like. Those are very different status, and by status, who's superior and who's inferior in terms of the conversation. You want to get that understanding, because in the case of when the IT person is kind of just sitting back in the corner and occasionally they're fed, you want to be their friend, you want to be their pal, you want to help protect them, you want to raise them, you want to nurture them, you want to make them better. It is much more of the soft skills, all of that kind of fun stuff. When the internal IT person actually has the ear of IT, or excuse me, of management, then it's a different. Then you basically want to come in as a peer and essentially say, I can give you additional support, I can back you up, I can work with you, I can make you stronger. And those are huge differences, because if you try either one of those on the wrong side, you're gonna have problems. If you go in to that level 1 person and you try to tell them about how much you're going to make them be able to stand up to management, that may be the last thing they want to do. And they don't want to be put in that place. But they want someone who's going to support them, who's going to have their back, who's going to make them look strong and better and all that kind of fun stuff. Reverse, if you come in and basically say, we're going to take care of that relationship with management for you, you're basically saying, I'm going to replace one of the best parts of the job, or one of the most important parts of the job, the relationship with management. You're trying to replace me. So you need to know how the nuance of that goes as soon as possible. The assessment is roughly the same. We're a network detective shop, so we use Network Detective a lot, all that kind of thing. It works very, very nicely indeed. However, if you'll notice, Network Detective reports always start with you have the worst network we've ever seen, hire us. Well, that's the goal of the tools. We always warn everybody ahead of time that that's going to be that way. It's going to present things as absolutely horrible because it's a sales tool. We make jokes about it. We have fun. When somebody has a 99 out of 100 being worst network, we basically say, we've never seen anybody less than 70 or less than 80, which is usually true.
That's true.
Yeah. But here's the thing. We're not selling Network Detective. We're selling us. And for us to basically go in and present these tools and say, by the way, let me tell you what the truth is behind those, that reinforces the fact that we're going to tell the freaking truth. Because from a traditional sales standpoint, you go in, you want fear, you want uncertainty, you want doubt. No, I want trust. I want relationship. I want belief, especially in a co-managed situation. But here's the thing. You also want to review the internal IT situation. You also want to take a look at how well are they staffed? What's their knowledge base necessary? How do they have tools necessary? And in this sense, you basically change it from the normal assessment tools are they healthy? Do they need, are they sufficient? Are they whatever? When you start looking at the internal IT, the question becomes more of, can I help? Can we make them better? Can we improve them? Can we support them? There's actually, if you look at the CoMITs for MSP's site, on the free side, the free resources, there's a worksheet that we created that's a beta version of an assessment. Where basically, you use the worksheet, just a bunch of questions and answers, and you rate how well they are with them. It's kind of, if you've used the audit IT tools, it's kind of based on that, though we haven't actually gone and created a link with that stuff, although it's on our board to do this this quarter. But you want to be able to talk about the productivity, about the internal IT people. And then finally, the last thing, well, the second last thing, over-involve in, let them say we don't need to be involved on that, not the other way around. So let them see the reports, let them do a network assessment review with them before you bring in management. And the reason you want to do that is because you want them to be a part of this. You want them to be your champion when they talk to management, when they give their opinion. How can you do that? By making them part of it. And my girls have all moved out long ago, but when I would come home and my mother, oh geez, Sigmund, and when my wife would say, "Do you know what your daughter did?" I know it wasn't good. Do you know what my daughter did? Oh yeah, it was fantastic. Do you know what our daughter did? Yeah. The same thing is true. If the internal IT people think that this assessment is partially their responsibility, they'll help come up with it. They've already seen what the bad things are, the good things are, whatever, then they're going to be more likely to support you, and especially if they've seen the proposal. So we review the IT, the findings, we review the proposal, not necessarily the dollars. It's back to that status. But we review things with them before management because we want them on our team. We want to gang up. And that's one of the best ways. And again, I talk all the time. I talk about the whole idea of, involvement versus commitment, the CEO versus internal IT. Same thing as a ham and egg breakfast. The ham and egg breakfast, the chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. Internal IT is the pig. They are committed. You've got to have them joining up. And then here's the last thing. The increased internal, and this was the thing I got mixed up on my slides. This is the thing that is absolutely critical for you to do a good job explaining, that even if they're going to work with your stamps, even if this is what we call a full CoMITs, meaning they're going to use our RMM, our PSA, they're going to use all our tools, they're fully responsible, we're only going to get involved when they escalate or when they ask us for advice. You focus on their improved productivity, on their job is made better, their job is made more productive, all of that. You have to have both for the individual as well as for the management, because that really rings back to that whole, we're going to bring you stronger IT and we're going to do it together. One of the things we've discovered in looking over our proposals and all that is we weren't doing enough of that. And now we have turned it way up in terms of how we're identifying those pieces. And so far, the response we've gotten has been pretty good on that. And I know we said 30 minutes of this part. We got a couple minutes late start, but we shouldn't be too far off. Then the final one was service. And here's where the trickiness is, because it really depends on your PSA tool. Most of the PSAs that we've used most, we're ConnectWise Managed Shop with Datto on the RMM, but I know that Autotask has their version. ConnectWise has their tools as well. What we do is we make it so that the techs essentially don't really care whether it's a CoMITs ticket or not. If they get assigned the ticket, they go ahead and do the work. If a ticket shows up on their desk, their service board, their whatever, they go ahead and do the work. That way they don't have to rethink everything. They don't have to go, oh, wait, that's this company. No, I want them as efficient as possible. So what we do is we automatically flow the tickets to whoever's responsible. So if it's a CoMIT situation, it goes over to that client's board that they've got for their co-managed for their CoMITs relationship. And if it's a split CoMITs where you've got some of the, we're responsible for the servers and infrastructure, they're for the desktops and all that, based on the device type or ticket type or whatever, it goes to our board or it goes to theirs. So the only reason a technician sees the ticket is because they're supposed to work on it. And the next thing, use your existing stamps whenever possible. Just like you would with a pure MSP, and you'll run into some resistance on this. The resistance, if it's a good lead, the resistance is fixable. So somebody says, oh, well, we already have this product, that product, whatever. You can basically say, look, we evaluated 10 different products before we made the decision on this product. And I've got 8 technicians or whatever your number is who know how to use this product. So, and we've implemented it, and we're gonna implement it based on best practices that we've developed. You've got your one stamp that you understand you're committed. We're going to give you some training on it. We're going to teach you how to use it. Don't worry about it. And if you can, if they sit back and go, well, we just renewed, we just renewed for a year, 3 years, whatever. Use credits if you want the client bad enough. Use credits, not discounts, credits to offset that cost for the duration of that agreement. So in other words, if they renewed at the beginning of this year for 2 years, well, they've got roughly 14 months left. So give them 14 months of a credit of that amount, or however much you want to do it, for what they spent on that stamp that will automatically expire when it's time for them to renew. That's one of the strategies. But again, you basically say, my people don't know this technology. We can't support you if something goes wrong here. We can't support you that it's a best practice. We can't, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. If you have to, you can make that an additional pay or additional cost on their part. Again, depends on how much you want, because that increases the cost for you to manage and run this client, just like it would be for a pure MSP. You have to decide whether it's worthwhile and whether or not it will be worthwhile if you raise the price a certain amount. But train them. You can't just say, use the PSA, use the RMM, okay, good luck. So we've done a couple of in-house events, which obviously we're not doing right now. So we have, in November, we have 2 half days, which are basically, we're focusing on as I hold up 4 fingers, the big 5 things, which is RMM, PSA, security, backups, and documentation. So we're basically going to do 8 hours of training on those 2 tools, as well as we're sending out, and we're recording those, and we'll make those available. And then we're also going to ask those clients who attended those, what are the 5 biggest questions you have of any of our stamps? And then we're going to do 5-minute videos on how to do each of those questions. And each quarter, we're going to try to do about 5 or 6 of those videos based on every question we get. So we're going to start building slowly a library of self-help videos for all of these things. And if you look at tools like Bigger Brains or other, you can even use, SharePoint Stream, whatever, there's ways to deliver those as needed to your clients and all. And the working the tickets, this is in my, it's actually in my 2 CoMITs books, but really the bottom line is the ticket is received from the internal IT. This is from the internal IT person's perspective. You basically make it so it flows automatically to either the MSP or to the internal IT person. So both of them, if they see the ticket, it's their ticket. Fairly simple strategy. And then if, in our case, we give away the free advice, which is absolutely critical in my opinion. So if they just need advice, they go ahead and they contact us and they work through that. And if they want to, they escalate it, in which case it goes to our board and the technician gets it and sees it. So we've got a process here that minimizes the amount of work that a technician on either side needs to do in order to figure out whether or not it's something they should be working on. Fairly straightforward, fairly simple. And if you get back to those questions I started with, we can give the services based on this filter as to what's covered by the MSP. We only want help desk, or we only want this, or we only want that. So by kind of working all this together, you can come up with, in my opinion, a collection of sales tools, of marketing tools, of service delivery tools that work for both the CoMITs, and the pure MSP model, which is what you want, because then you don't have to cross-train everybody all over the place. You definitely want the technicians to understand the difference. And we've done a couple, we call them learn-in-ours. We do a learn-in-our, it's a voluntary meeting for our technicians where we'll spend about 5-10 minutes on a particular topic, but we'll record it. And then if you look at the Teams channel, we have all of our learn-in-ours recorded so that and our technicians are expected to view the learn-in-our within the next week or so, and we can track that. So that's pretty much what I've got. The couple of things, on November 10th, we have our next CoMITs peer group. We had our first one, oddly enough, in October. We will be sharing we did a LinkedIn presentation that was aimed at potential CoMITs clients. We did our first one in October, and we're doing our second one actually tomorrow, I think. And then our next open CoMITs is going to be what are your stamps? Trying to help people figure out what their stamp collection is. That sounds weird. And there's some other links there as well. And as I always say, I would love to get some feedback on this material or any other material that we are doing, because I'm trying to help everybody move forward by providing both some free service and some free conversation like this, as well as monetizing it a little bit over for the CoMIT starter kit, which again is about $1,000. It gets you these. We've got we'll have about 5 campaigns once we get this new one out there, and we're adding one basically each month, as well as one-on-one counseling. And there's actually 2 versions of the I Don't Want Your Job book. One of them has all references of my MSP removed, and that's available only to the CoMITs for MSPs members, as well as the peer group. And that's it as far as my presentation goes.